All right, stand for the pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everyone, to Monday, May 5th. If you have any questions, concerns, come up to the microphone, give us your name and address, and state your business with this committee, commission, city council. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Cedar?
Here.
Members Foley?
Here.
Kinsfater?
Here.
Krebs?
Here.
Kappa?
Here.
Report?
Here.
McCartney?
Here.
All present, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. We'll go to, actually, I want to make an addition to the agenda, if you would let me do that. Under 9, new business, we'll put B, appointments to the Recreation Commission and the Harbor Commission. Appointments to Recreation and Harbor Commission. We'll go 9B. All right, we'll go back to number 4. The consent agenda, City Council minutes of April 21st, 2014, regular meeting, and April 24th, 2014, special meeting. Recommendations approved. B is the Board of Cemetery Trustees minutes of November 19th, 2013 meeting. Recommendation received. C is the DDA minutes of April 17th, 2014. Recommendation received. And the Harbor Commission minutes of April 26th, 2014 meeting. Recommendation received.
Motion to approve A through D as presented, Your Honor.
I'll support.
All right, motions made, support. Questions?
I have a question on the harbor, and it was number 7, and something about, it was the harbor master's report, and it was damaged from the railroad project. What was that about?
It's the sign, the entrance sign by M29.
Oh, okay, that
We
one
haven't-
thing.
Yeah, it hasn't been repaired. I don't know if administration knew that or not.
I think there was damage to sign to the irrigation system and I think to the sidewalk there. And yes, we do know.
Can we get them to fix that hole on M29 that's
By
on
the
their
tracks?
tracks? Yeah.
Can talk to them about both.
Anybody else?
We'd have to learn a whole new hole then, Jane. We've learned how to miss that one.
I know.
Okay.
Anybody else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We'll go to presentations 5A. Economic Development Alliance of St. Clair County. We have Mr. Dan Casey out here tonight. Dan, welcome.
Welcome, Mayor, members of council, Mr. Booth, good evening. It's good to be back in front of everyone again. Now this is my hometown, I'm happy to say. So it took me 2 minutes to get here. Gotta like that. As you know, the EDA works all over the county, so sometimes the drive's not quite so convenient. But anyway, it's good to be back in front of you tonight. What I wanted to do is give you a quick update, really at the 2013 wrap-up, if you will. I know that some members of the council were able to attend the EDA's semi-annual event in February, but not all of you could be there, so I wanted to make sure that we shared some of the good news with you. So you have our annual report, semi-annual report in front of you for 2013. I also thought I'd just tell you a little bit about how things are going this year so far in 2014. First, I want to just say that I think it's pretty obvious that the economy has started to turn the corner and good things are starting to happen across Metro Detroit and in St. Clair County and, of course, in the city of St. Clair. We've begun to see that real estate has dried up around the county and around Metro Detroit, which is good for us, especially when we look towards new construction in the future. Because first you have to get rid of the existing inventory before you really have a good shot at getting new construction to happen in your community. We are now at that point in our county where we're out of buildings, or essentially out of buildings. We have about 3 good buildings left in the county going forward. We report that we have a 6% vacancy rate in industrial across the whole county. But when you look at that, I would say about 4% of that is functionally obsolete buildings, where they have, you know, roofs that are too low, or the buildings are aged structures that would require a lot of money to make them functional for someone. And I can relate a story to, I guess recently we had a company out of Canada that called us up and said that they were looking for a 10,000 square foot facility for an industrial project. Not a big deal. 10,000 square feet should have a lot of that product on the market, right? But we didn't. We had 2 buildings in the whole county that were 10,000 square feet. And so we ended up showing them those 2 buildings that were over 20,000 square foot, and 1 building that was 30,000 square feet, because that's what we had. We got pretty fortunate because they liked one of the buildings that we showed them. Now they're currently negotiating a lease agreement to move into that building, and they're going to be expanding. So they're not moving out of Canada, but they're going to be expanding into the building. So that just kind of gives you an example of where we're at right now. When prospects come to us, there's just not much left to show them in the county. So our focus as an organization right now is moving very heavily toward greenfield construction and preparing sites for development in the future, because we don't see this changing for quite a few years. Similarly, there's some pockets of retail and commercial around the county where you'll still see a little bit of vacancy, but a lot of the more traditional retail markets, like Fort Gratiot Township, for example, is for the most part pretty full, and we saw some new construction in 2013. We had about 10 retail projects around the county that were new construction or significant renovation of existing buildings. So for the first time in a few years, we saw our retail investment in the county start to improve. We had around $20 million in retail investment around the county, which is great. That's great news. That's, usually industrial comes back first, then you'll see retail and commercial, and then lastly, it's housing. So that's kind of where we're at right now, is we're seeing a little bit more retail. We're seeing some investment from folks in existing retail spaces, people starting new businesses and so forth in the county, so that's good news. And the next thing will be, of course, trying to promote residential construction in the county. We're actively out there looking right now for land that is already prepped and ready to go for subdivisions. We're also looking to meet with some additional builders to try to recruit them to come into the county to build some spec homes on some of these lots. And of course, you've probably heard that the market is pretty tight right now for residential. There's not a lot of homes out there on the market. And yet our population as a county is down by about 5,000 people. So how are we going to get that population back? Well, we need some more homes on the market and some new homes constructed. And we need to take advantage of all the jobs that have been coming to the county. We added about 1,100 jobs in 2013, and we're on track to do that or even more this year. And yet our unemployment rate is down from what it was. The problem is that we lost 5,000 people in our population. We lost a lot of people that were good workers, had skills, that moved out of the state or out of the region. And now we're at a point where we need to start bringing some people back into the county to work at some of these jobs that are being created by our local companies. So with that, I just wanted to kind of give you an update on total numbers for last year and then where we're at right now this year. And then after that, I could open it up for any questions that you might have. First of all, last year we had 18 expansion projects. That's a pretty significant number of projects for our county. That's greater than we normally have. The result of that is we added about almost 900 jobs just on retention and expansion of existing companies in our county. In addition to that, we added 5 new companies that moved into the county, and then I already mentioned the retail investment. So total investment was around $118 million for St. Clair County last year. That's a good number. That's significantly higher than the previous year, and actually you probably have to go back to around 2007 or 6 where you would have seen an investment like that in our county. So that kind of tells you that the economy is moving in the right direction. As I said earlier, we had about 1,100 jobs that we added to the county. We had about 57 new home starts, which was better than the previous year, but nowhere near where we need to be. We actually had, for probably the 5th year running, we had more homes demolished in the county last year than we had built. So we want to see that trend change in the future and go in the other direction. Now, just a little bit about where we are right now. I had thought when the year started that this was going to be kind of a slower year for expansion projects because the last 2 years have been really busy, and pretty much all of our major employers in the county expanded during that time. I'm happy to report that's not the case. That in February, our phones started ringing like crazy, and within just a couple of weeks, we had 10 expansion projects on the table that we hadn't known about. Since then, we've added some more, and so now we're up to 17 as of today, 17 expansion projects in the county. Not all the investment will necessarily happen this year. A lot of times, as you know, the projects will span a couple of different years, but they're all expected to get started this year and then continue next year. So right now we're forecasting in the neighborhood of 800 new jobs just from these projects. In addition to that, we're working on some attraction projects. We've got one project that will be announced in about 30 days. We have to wait until the state announces it first before we can say anything. But we've got one project that we've worked on for a few months with an automotive supplier that's going to be moving into the county. In addition to that, this Canadian company that I just mentioned, they're close to finalizing their lease and moving into the county. They're going to be in Ira Township, so they'll be close by. And we've got several other projects that we've been working on, one of which is a greenfield project of a couple 100,000 square feet. Your community is in the running for that project. There's 2 sites that the company's looking at in our county, and you've got one of those 2 sites, so that's good news. We've been working with that particular company for, well, actually all the way back to 2006. That's how long it's taken to get them to make a decision to do a project. In that case, the company is planning to get corporate approval to go forward with the investment sometime in June. They're anticipating getting the land under control in the fall, site plan, building plan approval in the winter, and breaking ground next spring on that project. We also have another project that we started working on last year that's in the neighborhood of 400,000 square feet. Your site is one of 2 sites in Michigan that are under consideration, and there are sites in other states as well, going all the way down to Georgia. So it's a pretty big project, and the company's got a international site consultant working on the deal, and the state of Michigan, of course, and we've been involved with that one for several months. And we've got a third project that's also looking at the St. Clair Industrial Park, but it's early stage, so I can't tell you right now whether there's any teeth behind it or whether it's just someone shopping. So, but nonetheless, they did request information from us, and we've submitted it. So it's looking like it's going to be a very, very good year for the county overall. In terms of your community, we're working on a lot of different projects. A couple of them I could mention. We work confidentially with most of the companies, so I don't know if I want to mention all the names, but there are a couple of companies that are in the Haas Industrial Park that are going to be adding some equipment and some jobs this year. Dynamic Polymer Solutions is going to be moving into that park. They've already started the moving process. And Dana Corporation has already outgrown their building, and they've been in the market looking for warehousing space, which we've been helping them with, and who knows where it goes after that. So overall, things are looking pretty good, I think, for St. Clair. Of course, we're involved with the county and several other partners in the St. Clair Inn project, and doing what we can to assist the bank in disposing of that property to someone who's going to, of course, hopefully come in and meet the community's expectations for the reuse of that property in the future. I guess last thing, just to wrap up, is that our organization is committed to working with all of the communities in the county, and because of that, we've been promoting some regional planning projects recently. So one of the things that you will be hearing from us very soon, probably in June, is a request for public infrastructure projects that you would like to be put into a plan, an economic development plan. It'll be a 7-county regional plan. These will be the types of projects that you might want to seek federal funding to assist you in their construction. So it could be roads, could be water and sewer extension. We do intend to put the water tower that's been kind of proposed for the future, if needed, on the St. Clair Industrial Park. We're going to put that project in that plan as well, just so that it's eligible for federal funding when we go forward. So we're going to be doing a survey in about a month and a half to 2 months. And after that, we'll be coming to you looking for projects. And then the plan is going to be finalized around the end of the year. I think November is what we're slated right now to complete that plan. So stay tuned for that. Be thinking as a community about the types of projects, if any, that you have that you would want to include in that plan, and then we'll be coming back to you for your feedback in the near future. So with that, I'm going to open it up to any questions that you might have for me or for the EDA. Great. Well, thank you and for the opportunity to be in front of you tonight, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
All right, thanks, Dan. All right, we will go to 5B, the Michigan Historic Preservation Network. We have Ellen Thackeray here from the Michigan Historic Preservation Network to talk about historical districts. Welcome, Ellen.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I brought, I don't know if you wouldn't mind just taking one of these and passing them down.
Sure.
And then I don't know if any of you need to contact me, but I have those as well. Sure, yeah, if you don't mind. Thank you. My name is Ellen Thackeray. Thank you all so much for having me out.
Ellen, if you want, I think you can pull that microphone off of that stand, and if you want to.
All right, you know what? I'll just bring it over here. Is that all right?
Yep.
All right. My name is Ellen Thackeray, and I am the Michigan Historic Preservation Network Southeast Michigan Field Representative. I also represent the National Trust for Historic Preservation. And I'm here tonight because St. Clair, actually, a couple representatives from St. Clair had come to our conference a couple years ago. And we're talking about historic preservation and how we could get more involved and how we could work together. And this conversation has started up again just a week or two ago. So I'm out here tonight just to talk with you about different kinds of historic designations and to talk about how you all could protect some of your assets. Before I do that, in case some of you, and those of you too, are not familiar with the network, thank you. We are the statewide nonprofit for historic preservation. And I happen to be the Southeast Michigan field representative, but we also have a Greater Michigan field representative, and then we have our executive director in Lansing. So our home office is in Lansing, and we advocate for historic places and we advocate for policy. So we advocate both for the places themselves and then for sound preservation policy. We have coming up in Jackson, May 15 through 17, we have our conference, our annual conference, which is it has a lot of great information. Like I said, that's where I met somebody just a year or two ago from St. Clair, because you guys had some folks there. We have some case studies there. We have like how did a community put a project together. We have a tax credit session. If you want to learn more about federal tax credits, we have a tax credit session. So we have all kinds of great sessions. That's May 15th through 17th in Jackson. So I wanted to let you know that too. And the other thing that we do is we offer workshops, educational workshops. So if you feel like in your community maybe there might be some use for a plaster workshop or a wood window repair workshop, those are the kinds of workshops that we can offer. So that's what we do. The trust does a very, very similar work, so that's why I'm able to represent both.
Excuse me, Ellen? Could you take the little clicker there? Can you?
Would that be better?
That'll work, and if you arrow forward.
All right. Thanks. I want to just introduce the State Historic Preservation Office to you very briefly because we often get confused with them. They are our partners in preservation, but they are the state office. They are through the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, and they, like I said, they work with us, but they cannot advocate. But they run the National Register for Historic Places program. They run the Federal Tax Credit program. They run the Lighthouse program, the Certified Local Government program, which we'll talk briefly about. So they administer all these various programs, but they cannot advocate, and we advocate. We already talked about that. So what I thought we'd talk about tonight very briefly is the different kinds of historic designations that a community can seek, and then also a local historic district ordinance that can protect local resources. What you should know is that there are three different kinds of designations. There's national, there's state, and there's local. And the one that protects is the local. Preservation is done at the local level. So a lot of times that's really, people get very thrown by that because they feel like, why is it at the local level? If it's a National Register listing property, then that should mean that it's the most protected. It's actually the opposite. Historic preservation is done most effectively at the local level. Why do we care about old places? I'm sure all of you have reasons that you would add to this list, but certainly historic preservation is a tangible link to the past. It is history that you can touch. Our historic places give us a sense of place to our communities. I mean, you all know this. I've driven a little bit around your community, and I'm sure I haven't seen all your treasures. And your community helps give you that sense of place that makes you a desirable community for these companies that come in that you're talking about. They want to see a thriving community that's in touch with its past, but it's really also about the future. It's about the way you want to grow. It's about curbing sprawl and being environmentally conscious and aware, because a lot, when you demolish, as you said, you don't want to have too many demolitions. It ends up really so much construction waste just goes into a landfill. So if we can reinvest in our older places and our older neighborhoods and reinvest where that infrastructure is, it just makes good sense, but it also makes good economic sense. We know that unique sense of place can draw heritage tourists. We know that tourism money can into your economy. People come for a visit to a heritage place, and they end up spending money at the restaurants and the shops. So we know that. We want those are the kinds of tourists that we want in town. You all know this. But that higher quality of life, when we reinvest in our historic places and our older neighborhoods, we're protecting that quality of life that you all have come to appreciate and value. It can attract business investment, like I said, but most importantly, when we rehabilitate older buildings, we really do drive the local economy. We are local dollars. When we rehabilitate older buildings, those dollars stay in our local community much longer than building new. So if we can rehabilitate our older buildings, reinvest in our older buildings, that money circulates in our economy at a higher rate and longer. We'll talk a little bit more about local historic districts. Very quickly, the National Register of Historic Places, again, it is honorary, it is not protective. So when you think of it as a community, which kinds of designations you might seek for which kinds of sites in your community, the National Register of Historic Places, it raises awareness of your historic places. It's sort of a feather in your cap. It's a nice honor. But if your main goal is to protect, the National Register isn't necessarily the best one to go after. The only time that the National Register protects is when federal dollars or a federal permit are involved. So even if you have a National Register listed place, you might think, oh, okay, so that's great. We have this National Register listed place, then nobody can demolish it. That's actually not true. If someone is using private dollars, they can demolish a National Register listed place without any more than your regular local review process, whatever that may be. So just know that something listed on the National Register isn't really protected unless someone is going to be using federal funds or a federal permit. Some reasons you might do it, though, are you might want to make the property eligible for the federal rehabilitation tax credit that's available. Up to 20% of your eligible expenses when you rehabilitate are available back to you in the form of a federal income tax credit. So that's 20% of your total rehab costs can come back to you in the form of a federal income tax credit. Some other reasons you might do it, though, again, it raises awareness. It's a feather in your cap. If you have a historic, sometimes inn owners, for example, they'll use the fact that they're a National Register listed place to promote their inn, and they will promote that on their promotional materials. There might be walking tours that you might want to do that highlight your National Register listed sites. So it's more of a building of awareness. It's trying to help people appreciate what you all have. Sometimes when people live in a community for a really long time, they don't always appreciate what they're looking at every day. But if you start a campaign where you're putting more sites on the National Register, or you get a National Register district going, sometimes it can help people say, oh, I didn't realize that was important. I've driven by that building every day and I never really looked at it before. So sometimes it can help people see with new eyes. Again, though, no, it does not protect. And so there's no additional reviews for property owners beyond the usual local permit processes. If somebody wants to do work on a National Register building, they just come to you just like they would for any other thing. They just pull their regular permits. There's no additional layer of regulation. Some of your sites that you have in the National Register, you guys have some churches. In the greater county, you have Marine City Hall, the Depot, the Fort Gratiot, and Lighthouse. But in St. Clair itself, you have the Inn and you have several churches. So that was the National Register. The State Register of Historic Sites is very similar. It is an honorary program. Again, it is not meant to protect. It's just meant to be honorary. Again, it's a feather in your cap, and the State Register of Historic Sites and the State Historical Marker Program are one and the same. So anytime you see those green signs around, that is the state historical marker. And again, they can also raise awareness, pride. They can help people see with new eyes and appreciate what they have. They can educate. You could think about, as a community, you could think about approaching these thematically. You could think about what's a story in our community that we want to tell, and you could try to tell that story through strategic placement of various markers around town. That's one way to approach a marker program. They can encourage heritage tourism, because sometimes people they will drive out of their way to see a marker and read a marker and see the site. And they can encourage historic preservation, not so much because they protect, but more because they do raise that awareness, and they do help people appreciate the value of what you have in your community. And they can really bring people together. You know, there's fundraising involved because the community invests in these markers. So there's fundraising involved, there's the ceremonies, everyone gets together and they say, we value this place. And that's definitely worth something. So these are some places that you have. But really, if your community, if you have reached the point where you want to try to start protecting some places, if you're feeling like, I've heard from 3 different communities recently that they're feeling development pressure from tear downs. They're feeling like their historic character is starting to get eaten away in some of their neighborhoods and in their downtowns. And so maybe because the economy is improving, which is a good thing, but while it's improving and while you're feeling that development pressure, it's maybe is a good thing to think about getting an ordinance on your books that will help you manage the change that happens to your historic places. Because it's at the local level that preservation really happens, I suggest that all communities, any community I ever talk to, I always suggest that they have an ordinance on their books that would allow for a local historic district to be established. Even if the community is really not thinking about going down that road, even if they're not really considering going down a local historic district road yet, or ever, it's, I think, important to have the ordinance on the books because it does a couple things. If you were to have a local historic district ordinance on your books, it would allow for down the road districts to be established. Certainly it would allow that. But it allows for a couple other things too. It does allow for, if there is a resource in the community that is threatened, let's say it's threatened with demolition, and the picture on the bottom is, this just happened on May 2nd, that building was demolished on May 2nd, that community did not have an ordinance on the books. And so it was a one-room schoolhouse, and there was a group of people. It was the historical museum, the historical society kept their collections there, but a private owner owned it and was leasing it to the community for a very nominal fee. Well, the owner decided he didn't want to do that anymore. He was a developer and he wanted to make use of the space where that building was, and the community had no ordinance on the books. And if they did, then there could, if there were some political will among a body like yours, they could have all said, wait a minute. But they didn't have that ordinance on the books, and so clearly we can see that we lost the building. A different example, the building on the top, in that community, they did have an ordinance on the books. And so when that building was threatened, it's a mid-century modern building, we can see that. When it was threatened, the local community was able to say, wait a minute. It was a city commission, and they were able to say, wait a second. And what can happen is, when you have that ordinance on the books, what it allows you to do is it allows you to, as a body, you can establish, you can appoint a historic district study committee. And you can say for these streets, from here to here, or from here to here, or on this, in this area, from this point to this point, we would like a study committee to study this area to see if it's something we want to establish as a local historic district. When you do that, the study committee can get to work. It can just be a small group of people. They can get to work, but while they're working, you can do one of two things as the city council. You can either say, while the study committee is doing its work, we are going to not allow any development on this parcel until they have studied completely the history of this place. And that would be called an emergency moratorium, and that could be in place 6 months. And if the threat still existed on the historic resource, it could be extended another 6 months. So it gives you a power that you don't normally have. Normally, if like this, in private hands, if a developer says, you know what, we don't want to do this anymore, we want to level this property, there's only so much you can do. If you have the ordinance on your books, you can say, wait, we want to appoint a study committee, we want to think about this. And then you can either, like I said, you can either do the emergency moratorium, you can resolve to create an emergency moratorium, or you can resolve to establish that as a proposed historic district. It's almost like an interim historic district. And during that interim period, then any work that somebody wants to do on the parcel, they can take before the Historic District Commission. That would also require that you, in your case, since you don't have a standing commission, you would appoint a commission. So in your case, you'd have to do a study committee, and then you'd have to appoint a commission as well, if you wanted to go that route, so that you could then, any exterior work that anyone wanted to do on the property that you're studying, they would then have to go before the commission to have the work approved, just like they would if it were an established local historic district. So it just gives you the ability to decide, we want to give this building, this historic building, or this historic site, it could be a collection of buildings, we want to give it some time. And we want to study it a little further. And while we do that, we don't want either any work to be done, or we only want work to be done that's going to be appropriate for the building and sympathetic to the building. Having a local historic district commission and taking that step, saying we do care about our historic places and we want to have this ordinance on the books, it does give you access to a program called the Certified Local Government Program. And that program is a National Park Service program. And what happens is there is a federal appropriation that passes through the State Historic Preservation Office. And every year, the State Historic Preservation Office has to pass 10% of that certified local government, of that federal appropriation to certified local governments. So a community can, once they have their historic district ordinance in place, once they have their commission in place, once they've done a couple other things to plan for their historic resources, they could apply for the certified local government status. And what that status does for you is it helps you plan for preservation. It helps you work in partnership with the National Park Service to plan for preservation, but it also gives you access to that federal appropriation. 10% of the State Historic Preservation Office's dollars have to be passed on to certified local government communities. So those are grants that you can use for a historic preservation project. So like in Marine City, for example, if they were a certified local government, I'm not sure if they are, they could then go after a certified local government grant and work on their city hall, for example. So that's just one example and one. So you do it for several reasons. You know, you do it because you want to make the commitment to historic resources, but you also maybe want these powers to be able to say, we want to have a little control over this resource or this place for the next 6 months. And you do it because you can get access to the Certified Local Government Program. But you also do it if you do eventually go down the road of actually establishing local historic districts. You do that because you want to manage the change that's happening there. Like I said, if you're feeling like some of your historic resources are maybe threatened by development, or maybe there's a historic area in town that's really changing very quickly and you kind of want to get a handle on it, the local historic district process can do that, because it's not about freezing a neighborhood in a time. It's about understanding that the neighborhood is living and breathing and it is changing, but it's about managing the change that happens there so that you keep your historic characteristics that you have in your community. It is a local ordinance. It's local residents who serve on your historic district commission if you go down that road, if you appoint those folks. And you should know that they use 10 Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. So it's not like you can't change anything. It's about finding new uses for buildings. That's what rehabilitation is all about. But just know that over 90% of applications are approved the first time. So if you do go down this road of establishing a local historic district, once you get the commission in place across the state and across the country, it's well over 90%. It's usually like 95, 96% of applications that come before a commission are approved the first time. And it's, just to be clear, if you do go down that road, it's exterior changes. It's not maintenance. It's changing out windows or siding, and it would go before a commission who would apply these 10 standards to see whether or not the proposed work would meet the standards. This is one other tool that I just want you to be aware of. It doesn't, it's not on the handout that I gave you, but just in case any of you have like an older building that maybe has been in your family for a really long time and you want to see it protected. Your family has really invested in it over the years and you want to see it protected. This is a tool that you all can be aware of where if you don't, like, let's say you live in a community that doesn't want to go down the road of having a local historic district commission. They just, maybe it's a very small rural community, they don't have the capacity, they don't want to do that. In a situation like that, a private property owner could then donate what's called a conservation easement or a historic preservation easement on their property to protect it. So it's almost like setting up your own little private local historic district, and when you donate it to an organization like a nonprofit, like MHPN or the National Trust or the State Historic Preservation Office used to accept easements. Eastern Michigan University used to accept easements. Maybe they still do. This is just something so that you are aware on a private, on a personal level, that this is something that might be available to you, that you could protect a property that matters to you or matters to your family. It would be a way to protect it on into the future if you're afraid that over time it might get demolished. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you all may have, but I know I threw a lot of information at you. I wanted to be brief, but I just wanted to give you the information so that you would have it. This is just a summary of the different kinds of designations, and you can see where the protection is and where the federal income tax credit is, and if there are any other benefits. And often when we protect a place, either locally or when we do designate it listed on the National Register or we get a state marker for it, often if it's a nonprofit entity, that can help them, having those designations can help them get grants, for example. So if you had an arts organization that had an old schoolhouse, for example, that they were running their organization out of, saying it's listed on the National Register or that it's state marker, has a state historical marker, that can help them get grants. Like from the National Trust, for example, that's one of the things that the National Trust looks at when they award grants. So there are very, very many reasons that you might want to think about any one of these strategies, and any community can apply all three. Many properties are listed on several. So you can certainly, this isn't like one or the other or the other. I just wanted to let you know of the different options that might be available to you. That is my contact information, but if any of you have any questions, or if any of you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
How does the commission determine what's historic? Is there a certain criteria?
Yes. So the question is, how do you know if something is historic? What a community would do, and the kind of, I think it's a great thing, is everybody uses the same criteria. So there's the National Register criteria. So if you're looking at a site and a place and you're thinking, well, is it just old or is it actually historic? You apply what's called the National Register criteria. And so you're looking at age. It should be at least 50 years or older. There are exceptions to that if, like for a mid-century modern building, maybe it hasn't achieved 50 years yet, but it's significant for another reason, for example. And it has to be intact, which is to say it should look mostly like it did when it was really important, or when it became significant, or even when it was built. Some changes are okay, sort of like if you think about integrity on a sliding scale, some changes are okay, but if someone from the past were to come back and look at that building, would they recognize it? So you're looking at age, integrity, and then you're also looking at significance. And when you talk about significance, you're looking at what does this place, how does this place tie into either events or people from the past? So you figure out, or so it can be tied to events that maybe illustrate broader themes in American history. It can be tied to a place, like a very significant, it can be tied to a significant person, for example. But I want to be clear, things can have different levels of significance. So there can be a local level of significance, a state level of significance, or a national. So a lot of communities feel like, well, we don't have anything really important here. We don't have anything significant, but to your community, it's significant.
Sure.
So it can be where the mayor, or if you had a governor who went on, or maybe a state representative from your community who went on to become governor, and here's his house. It can be things like that. It can be, in a community that might have a courthouse, and that a whole commercial district developed around a courthouse. That tells the story of your community. So you're sort of clicking that lens of significance, and you're saying, okay, what story are we trying to tell, and how does this place help tell that story, and how does it sort of tie into the larger themes of history that we can tie to? So there's all different ways that you could make a case for a historic place.
Mitch, can I give you an example?
Yeah.
A local example? Good example, Murphy Inn would meet the 50-year requirement. There's no question about that one. But I've talked to SHPA, and Riverview Plaza would qualify as a historical district because of its uniqueness. It is a condo shopping center. And that was something that only happened in a few places in the United States. And it's, as far as I know, there's only 2 left in Michigan that are still operating. One of them's, they're trying to tear it down. But
Sure.
it would qualify
Because of
under the
its
uniqueness.
significance. Sure.
Ellen, I do have 2 quick questions for you, please. The commission you refer to, how many people usually serve on that?
There's a committee, there's the study committee, and there's no requirement as to how many people would serve on that. And then if you were going to establish an actual historic district commission, on the commission, it's based on population. So communities under 5,000 have 5 to 7 members, and communities over 5,000 have 7 to 9 members on their commission.
All right. And then you had mentioned the certified local government. 10% is dispersed.
Yeah.
What does that averagely, how does that work out to what
Well,
do people get?
Okay, so for certified local governments, a typical, I don't know exactly what their appropriation is from year to year, but a typical grant, for preservation, we all know historic preservation is a hard thing to fund. So it's one of the larger grants that I think of. It's not unheard of to have like $20,000 or $30,000 toward something, toward a building or toward a project. And that's a 60-40 match. That one's not a dollar for dollar match. It's a 60, you only have to come up with a 40% match.
Anybody else with any questions for?
I moved really fast because I didn't want to take your whole meeting. We could talk about this stuff all day. So if you guys ever want to have me back to just focus on this, I'm happy to do it. But I didn't want to take your whole meeting up.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you guys so much for your attention. Thank you.
All right. All right, then we will go to number 6. Ordinances, resolutions. A is the ordinance introduction of the historic district ordinance that you have before you, prepared by Mr. Downey. Mr. Booth, you want to add anything or expound on anything?
I'd just like to say, keep in mind, I guess the ordinance, if it is adopted, does not commit us to creating a district. However, it would commit us to a study committee, if we so choose. So, I guess the question becomes, do we want to introduce it this evening?
I'll make a motion to introduce it.
I'd support that motion.
All right, the motion is made and supported to introduce the historical district ordinance. Any questions?
This is the first reading, right?
This is the first reading.
Well, I have a couple, but in a sense, I wish Mr. Dunning was here. But anyway, by reading this, it looks like it's just all external on a building, anything, home, et cetera. And then, at the very back of it, well, I shouldn't say back of it. All right, on page 11, the acquisition of historical resources, there's one sentence that says the commission is responsible for maintaining publicly owned resources. Would that be something like Marine City's old City Hall? Thanks, yeah. All right, okay, so,
And that's only if they choose to acquire it. They don't have to acquire it. Your city commission or your local historic district commission, they don't have to acquire any property.
okay, that's true. And then it would be designated wherever we would want it to.
You don't have to have any ownership of anything at all.
Okay.
Anybody else? Call the roll, please.
Coco?
Yes.
Laporte?
Yes.
McCartney?
Yes.
Foley?
Yes.
Kinsfater?
Yes.
Krebs?
Yes.
Cedar?
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, thank you. All right, thanks again, Ellen. We'll go to 7, Reports Administration, A, City Superintendent, Mr. Booth.
Okay. You will find on your desk a preliminary copy of the city's 2014-15 budget. At this point, I would like to announce the date for the public hearing. The hearing will be held May 19th at a regular scheduled council meeting, 7 p.m. Next item, if you're ready, is I'd like to ask council's consent in the appointment of Annette Sturdy as the city's new city clerk. Annette has worked for the city since May 23rd of last year. Annette's role was that of assistant to the city clerk. During her time with the city, she has performed many of the functions that she will be required to do going forward. In particular, Annette received accreditation as an election official in January of 2014. This allows her to run our upcoming elections. Annette received her undergraduate degree from Central Michigan University while majoring in political science and sociology, and I think she'd make a fine addition to the city staff. Any questions on the position?
Support. Oh,
Motion to approve.
All right, motion made and supported. Any questions, comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Welcome aboard, Annette. Congratulations. I didn't know you went to Central. I see you brought your posse tonight. Just to put a little pressure on us. It's all right. Okay. All right, good. We have nothing from the city attorney this evening. City departments, authorities, boards, commission, committee chairs, and council reps. Number 9, we have 8. We have no unfinished business. We'll go to number 9, new business. A, St. Clair Booster Club special event sign placement request.
was that in our packet?
I didn't receive anything. I didn't see
Our
I
former
can't
clerk
remember seeing it.
received a request from the Booster Club, and they'd indicated they'd have someone here this evening. Not sure who she spoke with. We did put it on the agenda, and appears as though no one's here, so I guess we'll strike that one from the agenda, and if they so choose, they may come back to our next council meeting.
All right. We'll move on to B, which we added this evening. And with your blessing, I'd ask to appoint to the Harbor Commission member Kufa and appoint to the Recreation Commission Mr. Member McCartney.
Motion to approve.
Support.
Motion's made, supporting questions. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Number 10 is claims and accounts for April 25th and May 2nd, 2014.
Hearing no questions, Your Honor, I make a motion to approve as presented.
I'll support.
Motion's made, supported. Questions? Anybody? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 11 is public comment. Questions? Anybody have anything tonight for the good of the cause? Mr. Lockwood.
Mayor Cedar and council, I just want to make 2 public announcements. I think it's Thursday, May 15th. The City Historical Commission will be doing a remembrance on city of or St. Clair Inn. If you have any memories or any paraphernalia, come to the museum. It'll be Thursday at 7 p.m. There'll be no charge. They want to record the verbal history and take pictures of any items that you may have. And also the reminder that starting the 16th, Friday, 4 p.m. is Marble Eye Tournament. Hope to see everyone there.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, we'll go to number 12. Mayor and council member comments and announcements. I certainly want to welcome Annette on board, and can you do anything to help you make the transition? Certainly ask Mr. Booth.
Thank you.
We got your back. Anybody else that have anything tonight?
In the packet, there was a letter from the Legion for Memorial Day Parade. Is that going to be on the next agenda, or when are we going to talk about that?
I'm sorry, there was one in there, Butch?
Yeah.
There was
Yeah.
not.
There was.
Asking for
Information
permission.
only, but I mean, that's something we got to vote on, so is that going
Yes.
to be next?
I believe Rick had planned on the next one.
Okay. Is that true?
All right, anybody else?
Hearing
Right.
nothing else, Your Honor, I make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Have a good night, everyone. Thanks for coming. Be careful driving home.